this reality, and their children have gone because of anti-Semitism. And enter Joël Kotek.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Charles and Ira, thank you again. I've been here since the beginning. My English is not so good, so unfortunately, you know, I'm a French speaker, so I will have to speak. I will read my presentation. My first part will be on Belgium. The second part will be illustrated by, I'm a specialist on cartoons. This is my favorite thing. You know, I'm a Belgian. You know, you heard about Hergé, Tintin? Well, it's a Belgian hero. Actually, Tintin, his father, Hergé, was anti-Semitic, but it's not the point today. So I will speak about radical anti-Semitism, radical anti-Zionism in Belgium, and I will start my presentation now. Since 2001, Belgium, my country, like France or Great Britain, witnessed a rise in anti-Semitic incidents, the worst year since 1945. Yet Belgium, like France, has not become the anti-Semitic countries that certain people believe it ought to be denounced as to the rest of the world. Belgian Jews face no real discrimination. Of course, you can have some problem if you would like a Hasid or Be'er Kippah. You could be beaten in Antwerp, for instance, or if you decided to publish a pro-Israeli opinion in a daily like Le Soir or La Libre Belgique. You will be considered as a strange animal. A Zionist in Belgium is a kind of insult. Anti-Semitism as such, I mean traditional anti-Semitism, has even decreased if we consider the mainstream people. In Belgium, Jews are more and more considered as white people, which is strange. Yet, one should be worried at the definitive release of the anti-Semitic speech. Taboo or even facilities that have been in place since World War II has been broken. We have in law, a new law against ritual slaughter, for instance, which has been adopted by the three main Belgian parliaments. And I think it's a good indicator of change. From Catholic circles to the extreme right, passing through a large part of the left, diverse groups take advantage of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to release, through so-called anti-Zionist position, all anti-Semitic clichés, as I will show in the second part of my presentation. This thesis is far from being overdrawn. But before I continue my presentation, allow me to make an important point. Anti-Zionism is not necessarily of the order of anti-Semitism, even if the criticism is harsh or unfair. Compare Israel to Nazi Germany is anti-Semitic. Criticizing Netanyahu policy is not. Anti-Zionism should be considered anti-Semitic when criticism appears obsessive, totally disproportionate, unfair, and I would say phantasmatic. According to me, radical anti-Zionism is like a psychosis. This is why I use the concept of radical anti-Zionism when it comes to anti-Semitism. And this is why also I fully agree with the new IRA definition that you all heard about. And the truth is that radical anti-Zionism has reached the mainstream of Belgian society. Opposition to Israel is undisputed. Even the mainstream political parties felt compelled to adopt anti-Zionist position. So how to explain the phenomenon of what I called radical anti-Zionism? The failure of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process could only be a part of the explanation. The anti-Israeli passion, because this is a passion, and I can't see another word to describe the current hostility towards the Jewish state, is far too big to be explained only by external factors, such as the conflict itself. Of course, let's assume then the status quo policy of the Israeli government doesn't help at all. Nevertheless, Belgian attitude towards Israel and Zionism seems to be much more influenced by internal factors, and I will present you 7 internal factors. The first one is what I call the Catholic habitus, which gives the Jew the role of the scapegoat and which dates back to the Middle Age. The Jew being responsible of the world misfortunes, plague, cholera, infanticide, wars, etc. The myth of the child-killing Jews appearing here central. If one is to believe the principal editorialists of Wallonia, Flanders and Brussels, all the frustration of the Arab world are the result of the non-resolution of the Palestinian question. The second will be what I call a leftist habitus, dating back to the Middle Age, which associate the Jews with financial oppression and capitalism, now symbolized by the United States. And of course, opposing Israel is a way of opposing the United States at low cost without too much risk. The third factor is an Arab-Muslim habitus that holds since 1948 that the Jews are responsible for the misfortune of the Arab world. This within the context of a democratic boom. New democratic trends leave little hopes. On one side, the decline of the Belgian Jewry, on the other, the formidable dynamism of the communities of Muslim origin, which make up around 25% of the population in the Brussels metropolitan region. Brussels is already the Western capital with the highest percentage of persons from Muslim origin or professing the Muslim religion. Population projections show that about 2030, Islam will be the first religion in Brussels, the capital of Belgium and Europe. Thus, around 25% of Brussels' regional member parliament are originated from the Muslim world, mostly from Morocco. In the Brussels regional parliament, 60% of the socialist MPs are originated from Morocco or Turkey. It is easy to see why the only economic treaty ever denounced by this parliament was the one signed with Israel. Muslim vote is essential for leftist and even Catholic parties. A month ago, the Brussels parliament condemned once more Israel following the Gaza crisis. And of course, it never questioned Syria or other countries in the world. Fourth, the new vision or strategy of the progressive left that sees the Muslim as the new oppressed class, as the new wretched of the earth, les nouveaux opprimés de la terre. The Arabs are often presented as the new Jews, Islamophobia as the new antisemitism. Actually, the neglect of the working class by the post-war left explained the fact that the vote of the workers went to Donald Trump in the States, to Marine Le Pen in France, and why the working class in Britain supported Brexit. Fifth, a difficult relation with the Holocaust, especially in Flanders, where a certain percentage of nationalists did collaborate with the Nazis. In this context, opposition to Israel is an easy way to forget, to forgive, or to trivialize Flemish collaborationism. The Europeans blame us for the evil they did to us. Two other factors that doesn't concern a priori the Jews must be added. Sixth, the difficulties of the Belgians to dealing with their own colonial past. The silence around the violence perpetrated by the Belgian colonizators against the Congolese is astonishing. This amnesia, it's really an amnesia. The only important study has been published by an American Jewish historian, which wrongly postulates a Belgian genocide in Congo is compensated by a feeling of guilt towards the Third World and the temptation to turn aside the emotive charge of colonialism by a radical critic of Israel, the state of the Jewish people, towards whom the Belgians have also a sense of guilt. Within this vision, Israel is of course presented and perceived as a white state. Seven, and the last factor, I would say, and this is maybe one of the most important, a certain dose of pragmatism. Above all, Belgium is a pragmatic country. As a former leader exporter per capita in Europe, Belgium must, above all, consider its commercial interests, which drive to a morality of variable geometry. It means acts of compassion tied with geopolitics. Economically, it is far less dangerous to have a moral stance against Israel, Taiwan, or Rwanda than on China, Qatar, or Russia. So all those factors combined to marginalize the Jews in Belgium, they just demographically doesn't count anymore. And to transform Israel into the ideal scapegoat, actually a role traditionally awarded to the Jews since the lower Middle Age. As well as the Jews yesterday, Israel is now the misfortune of the world. You know the word in German, die Juden sind unser Unglück. In this respect, Anti-Zionism could be seen as the last avatar of the traditional habitus of blaming the Jews, despite or because of their weakness. There is no danger to blame the Jews. To blame the Jews has always been a tactic that works. In the Middle Age, rather than fighting against armed infidels in the Holy Lands, many crusaders chose to kill unarmed Jews instead. In the 19th century, rather than attack the true leader of finance, it was for the financier Jew that Proudhon or Karl Lueger or even Karl Marx, the young Karl Marx, would reserve the sting of their criticism. Today, instead of criticizing Turkey for the Kurds, Morocco, China, Russia, or even the United States, once preferred to attack Israel for its human rights violation. By a subtle mechanism of transferal of animosity, the Jewish state has become the figure which substitutes for the rest of the world, and especially the United States, a superpower which is far harder to affront. My conclusion of the first part. In conclusion, radical anti-Zionism should be seen as the policy of the lesser evil, For the Belgian of the third millennium, anti-Zionism is a matter of consensus and sense. Opposition to Israel serves the interest of all the components of contemporary Belgian society, the left as well as the right, Catholic as well as secular, immigrants as well as Walloon or Flemish. Recently, one of the most influential Flemish columnists compared the Flemish to the Palestinian and, of course, the Francophone to the Israeli. They try to steal, to colonize the Brussels periphery, as the Israeli do in Jerusalem. I quote, "Of course, the Wallonian didn't share this Flemish vision. For them, the real Palestinians are the Francophone, the Flemish playing in their editorial the role of the cruel Israeli." No other conflict commands such attention in Belgian university. BDS groups are more and more active with Belgian campuses. In April 2013, the Fédération des étudiants francophones officially joined the platform Academic Boycott of Israel. In May 2016, more than 250 academics and so many artists signed an appeal of the Palestinian so-called civil society against the politics of occupation led by the Hebrew state. And of course, there are no such boycott of any other university in the world. They demand the complete and constant boycott of all the Israeli cultural and university institutions. In this sense, one should then consider anti-Zionism as a veritable cultural code that acts as a fantastic evidence which serves to express all sorts of purposes. It's a tool for the Belgian to act as a virtuous country in foreign policy. It's a way to rehabilitate those Flemish nationalists who did collaborate with the Nazis. There is a kind of schadenfreude to consider that Israel is now behaving like Nazi. It's a pledge for the integration of New Belgium. As I said, the criticism of Israel or Armenia to attract Turkish votes has become the best way to please the Muslim voters. When I speak about Israel and the Jews, you can speak about Armenia, or Socialist Party, which is supposed the most left parties in Belgium, had refused to endorse, Armenian genocide because they were afraid to lose their Turkish votes. The Jews of Belgium are now being victim of what should qualify a pragmatic anti-Semitism or electoral anti-Semitism, a mixture of latent anti-Semitism, and I will say of local interests. Anti-Zionism acts as fantastical evidence which serves all sorts of resentments. Failure of integration, worries in the face of globalization, class warfare, and conspiracy theory. Well, a little bit like Ukraine. The Belgian case is interesting, as Charles said, as it may augur for the new place of the Jews in Europe in the third millennium. I would say a marginal place, if not a place of pariah. Parallel to the growth of population of Arab Muslim origin and at the same time the accelerating decline of the Jewish population, with the exception of France and Britain, the marginalization of European Jewry will amplify as the instrumentation of the Arab-Israeli conflict. So this is the end of my first part. The second part will be less classic, I would say. Thank you. So let's start with the second part. I think I've got time.
Can you send this?
Of course. Well, why not? Yes, sure. Thanks. So, already, let's wait for the second part. Maybe we'll refuse it. So, in the second part, I will try to express how those ideas are expressed within, I would say, the public mainstream, you know, the cartoons, the expression, demonstration in the streets in Brussels, etc. But I will make you a little bit lecture on what is anti-Semitism, what is, I would say, graphic anti-Semitism. And of course, I've been writing several books on this. And unfortunately, since I would say the last 20 years, we see the return of traditional anti-Semitic vocabulary, especially in comic strip. What I call old myths are the building blocks of the contemporary anti-Semitic discourse. And you know what are the basis of anti-Semitic discourse? The Jews as Judaism as a satanic religion, the Jews as master of the world, especially, very important, the Jews as the deicide, the killer of the Christ, of Jesus, and now of Palestine, and even more important, the blood-sucking vampire. You know, the fact that the Jews, they suck the money and they suck the blood, and they are killing children. This is really the core of new anti-Semitism, infanticide. You know, that the Israeli soldiers, they want to kill children, and especially babies. So the Jews as the personification of absolute evil, and so we see in today's Arab country the revival of the main accusation that were invented in Western Europe, not in the Arabic countries. So the classic anti-Semitism of Christian anti-Judaism resurrected in the Arab Muslim land. The Jews, for instance, this is an example. This is the Stürmer, you know, the Nazi publication. And then when, you know, Judaism is represented as a satanic religion, and then this was when the Pope John Paul II visited Israel, and you can see it's the same representation of the Jews. The satanic Talmud, and then you can see this is a Lebanese cartoon made in 2002 by actually a Christian Lebanese, Stavros Jabra, and you can see that the Palestinian is killed from the Talmud. Again, the symbol of Judaism, Sharon, and then you can see it was in the year 2000, America dominated by the evil Jew, represented as Hasid, the Jews as master of the world. This is an anti-Semitic cartoon. The Jew eating a Bolshevik, eating America, eating the English Empire, and now today, the Jews, yes, maybe it will be better, without, yes. Thank you, Carlton. I think it's better, no? Yeah. Then you can see the Jews eating America, eating United Nations, the Arabic country, the Palestinian, of course, Bolshevism disappeared. This is a Serbian cartoon, you know, anti-Masonic, anti-Judaic representation. The Mason Jew manipulating Churchill and Roosevelt, and then the same, you see Sharon manipulating George Bush, manipulating the UN, etc. You can see, this is the capitalist Jew, and this is the Israeli Jew. And then, of course, you know that Obama was a puppet of the Jews. Everyone knows it. This is how he was represented within the Arab cartoon industry. McCain, Obama, etc. And I've got thousands of such a cartoon, etc. The Jews as Christ and nation killer. You can see, and of course, it's not within the Muslim tradition. In the Muslim tradition, Jesus was not killed. He was asked by God. Isa is just a prophet. But now they are integrating anti-Semitic Christian, myth. And this is a Stürmer, when you can see Germany, crucified like, it's semi-pornographic, a beautiful lady actually, and semi-pornographic and semi-anti-Semitic. You can see the evil Jew crucifying Germany, represented as a lady. And then Stavro, this is the main famous Palestinian cartoonist, Bukhari. And then you can see the Israeli soldiers. It's a representation of La Pieta. And of course, you know that Jesus was a Palestinian. He was not a Jew. He was a Palestinian. And she said, Maria, do not kill him twice. And this is a typical, anti-Semitic, Christian anti-Semitic representation. But, since Vatican II, it was, erased finally. Again, the same, etc. Most important, this myth, the blood-sucking vampire, the Jews and ritual murder. So yesterday, you can read it? Well, it's not maybe it shouldn't be in voilà. And then you can trace it in history. It's the massacre of the innocent. The myth about the king's Herods, absurd myth, but it connected the Jews with the killing of children. And of course, it belongs to the, I would say, the collective inconscience of Christianity. And then, of course, ritual murder. The first occurrence is 1144, Norwich, actually England, when the first time the Jews were accused of killing a young child. And this is another case. There were hundreds of cases like this since 1144, and the last case was in Poland, 1946, in Kielce, where Jews were accusing of trying to kill a young Pole. So 1144 till 1946, this has been the central accusation against the Jews. And in Ukraine, there was a famous Bailey's affairs, I think in 1902 or 3, something like this. This is the Trento, 1475 in Italy. And of course, the Pope didn't believe, the Christian authority didn't believe in this, because it's absurd. Kosher food prohibits such a thing by definition, because the Christian believe that the Jews use the blood for the fabrication of the matzah, of the special bread. And of course, the Christian authority knew it was absurd, but they endorsed it. And so all those children were canonized by the Pope, by the Church. And they were all decanonized after Vatican II, all of them. And so this is a famous representation of Quattrocento painting. It's the same little boy. And this is a representation, a Nazi, again the Stürmer. And you can see what is anti-Semitism. It's a projection of what we want to do to the Jews, and we accuse them of what we will do to them. And it's a projection. It's supposed to be self-defense, and they accuse the Jew of Holocaust, because what are the Jews doing? They are trying to kill German children. And it's 1934. And you can see that even if the Nazis were anti-Christian, still you have the Golgotha. And so it's connection to the, I will say, the old Christian representation. And so this is in a very famous church in Poland. It's 18th century painting, and this is in Qatar, or as far as I remember, a representation which almost look alike. This is the Bailey's affair, and this is another cartoon that was printed in 2001, and it's 1911 actually, the Bailey's affairs. And this was published in Ça va? Okay, thank you. This is for Al-Aram, the most famous Egyptian newspaper. I think it's 1 million copy a day, actually. This is the mainstream Arabic newspaper.
It's a state newspaper.
What? It's a state newspaper, and you can see it's terrible. you see Israeli people, you know, killing young Palestinians and to drink their blood. You know how disastrous this kind of representation is, and you can find thousands or at least hundreds of those representations. And so, what's happening? Because le plus important, voilà. This was actually a little book which was printed also, I think, in Egypt. Yes, for Ramadan, and it's describing how the Jews are, you know, killing young children for the pleasure. And you can see how the Jews is depicted. It's almost like a Sturmer Jew, is a Sturmer Jew with the Nazi and the Star of David, etc. This is Italian cartoon. Italian. It's the front page of La Defensa della Razza, and then you can see a Lebanese when the Jews are supposed to suck the blood and the water of Lebanon. The Vampire, 1936 Germany, 2003 Palestine. And this is Shaul Mofaz, if you remember. He was Ministry of Defense.
Oh, really?
Yes, he looks like him. During the night only, not during the day. Of course, during the day he looks like a human being. Against infanticide, this was, you know, how to say, a little, not a cartoon, a dessin animé. How would you say dessin animé?
Cartoon?
A cartoon specially made for Ramadan, and it's a promotion of a drink invented by Sharon, and it's called Dracula. And Dracula, it's made of Palestinian children's blood. But you imagine, of course, the result of such a thing, and I've got hundreds of those. You know, you can see, and it's continued like this. The Israeli being as the ogres, those who tried to kill children, etc. This is terrible too. Palestinian blood, sail, and it looks like, you know, gas chamber, something like this. Again, again, and now the repercussion in the West, because this is the important thing. And so this I just discovered. I don't know if you see it. It's published the 21 of July 2018. You can see a beautiful painting of Jesus, you know, of the cross, and then you see a Palestinian. And then the man wrote, Jesus era Palestino. Jesus was a Palestinian, of course, and it's in Portuguese. I can read Portuguese. And he was killed by the Zionists. It's incredible. And you can see the transcription, you know, today of, you know, old times representation, mythology. And so what I call by a perverse complex mechanism, these antisemitists from another age have little by little reappeared amongst us. This is Sharon. He is a bat. Unfortunately, he make a mistake with the canine. The canine should be on the other way. So it's not actually, it's a fake. This is Israel needs your blood, your children's blood. This was made in the United States, not in Arabic countries. This was made in the United States. This also was in a campus in San Francisco, 2002. Made in Israel, Palestinian children's blood, and it's slaughter, if you can, because you can see. Charles, yes, a little bit, and it's, look, slaughter according to Jewish rights under American license. So you can see, it's not anti-Zionist, or it's radical anti-Zionism, because, you know, it accuses against Judaism as such. This is the French one, very terrible too. Boucherie Israël, then you can see cervelle d'enfants palestiniens sautés, it means brain, Palestinian, etc. And then everyone is traditional killed according to the Talmud, and etc. And it was killed with sniper and missiles. And you can buy those Palestinian brain with your ticket restaurant, of course. Aye. This is sabotage. No, I'm sorry. I think it's just to.
It's a Zionist conspiracy.
It's a Zionist conspiracy. It's okay?
Yeah, I think you turned it off. No, it's flashy.
It's okay, it's good.
Okay, it's going back.
I've got few more. No, wait. My English is not good.
It will take a second.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah, I see it.
It's warming up.
Yeah, but I see the light. Oh, it's there. Okay.
I think it's too high.
Just one book less, maybe.
Yeah, I think.
One what?
Okay.
One book out.
One book less, yeah, careful.
Yeah.
Voilà. Okay, sorry, thank you. So this is from Le Monde. If you know, of course, the famous Le Monde, well, the equivalent of the New Yorker. And this was published in Elie Barnavi, who was a former ambassador of Israel in Paris, and is a left winger. Well, he was infuriated with this, of course, with this cartoon, because of course you can see an Israeli snipers killing children. Again, why? The only army in the world killing children are the Israeli. No other army in the world. It means especially not the Syrians. Oh, I don't know why. This is Carlo Latouf. He is a very famous Brazilian, maybe the most famous altermondialist cartoonist, and he makes a specialty of doing anti-Israeli, radical anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist cartoons, and this is supposed to be an Israeli, jet, the same, It's written here, but you can't see. Yes, it's written there. The Americans in Vietnam, they were born to kill. The Israeli soldiers are born to kill children. It's not the same. So, why? The only way to understand it is through history. If you know that ritual murder, if you know that infanticide is anti-Semitic, And this was in the United States. Very strange. It's a series, very strange, when you can see, the Israeli leaders, killing not only children, but, the hero of our youth, And even Shimon Peres, the Gaza conflict from the extreme left wing. And the boycott, using also the image. Boycott Israel, and they will show babies with the stigmat of Jesus, more or less. The same. Don't buy Garnier. Garnier has nothing to do with Israel, nothing to do with Judaism, with the Jew, or with anything. It's just the French multinational companies. And don't buy Garnier because after baby killings. Why? Because it sells its products in Israel. That's the only reason. And then boycott Israel, and we always show children. And the Belgian case, I will finish with this. This is a poster which was posted, placardé in my university, and it's Palestinian mothers, don't let your children cross this point. Children killers ahead. And they were building a fake wall in my university with a control check, and this is what they used to put. And it was impossible to remove it. For 3 days, we had to support it. For me, it was good because I make a picture of it, so I can show it to you. But this is the only good thing. This is also to show, this is every 3 years, we have a national poet. And I don't know where it was in 2014. Charles Ducal became our national poet. And Charles Ducal is famous because he wrote a poem on Auschwitz. But it's not on Auschwitz. It's a poem on Palestine being Auschwitz. And it's incredible. This man was named National Poet of Belgium after, those, how to say, if you can read it, where he explained that after Auschwitz, the Jew expelled Palestinians from their house. This is also in the street, the main street in Brussels. They will organize, like in Middle Age, how would I say, théâtre de rue, street theater. And this is a man, Israel, and they will have always this baby carriage to show that the first victim, the first target of the Israeli will always be the babies. And you see people around it unable to understand what's happening because it's extremely violent. This is the national, I would say, campaign against Israel, and it was the posters after, you know, one of the Gaza wars. And how do they represent it? They show an Israeli airplane, and then they will show, how would you say, a carriage, baby carriage? What?
Yeah. Carriage.
And it makes me also remember of Cuirassier Potemkin, you know, film of Eisenstein. It's always connected to this image. And this was the main demonstration. There were 20,000 people in the street. There were 200 for Syria. There were 50 for the Kurds and the Yazidi. 20,000 for the Palestinian. And how do they represent? It's always, you know, dolls with blood. And all parties were represented, from the right to the extreme left. This is an also thing, you know, you can see Gaza, everyone is guilty and against the carriage. And then you can see this is the target, of course, that Israeli are, you know. This, you heard about the famous Iranian competition about the Holocaust. And Belgium was lucky. We won one of the prize, and we were very happy. In Belgium, we won one of the prize. And the Belgians in Flanders, they were so happy that they named this man ambassador, cultural ambassador of his town, because he won an international prize with these pictures. You know, special prize to the second Holocaust cartoon contest, and he was named ambassador in Flanders. We tried to explain that it was terrible. Nobody understood us. They couldn't understand us. It was worthless. This is the most terrible. This man is very famous. He's a French cartoonist called Zenon. He is connected to Dieudonné or to, you know, Dieudonné or Alain Soral. Extreme left, extreme rightist, but coming from the Communist Party. It's really, I would say, the new anti-Semite. You know, pro-Palestinian, pro-Putin, and anti-Israeli. And of course, this is, you know, Auschwitz, Birkenau, 6 million, it's the fake. And what is funny, I spoke about the Socialist Party in Belgium. The Socialist Party in Belgium chose to organize a talk, a conference about why can't we talk peacefully about Zionism? And they choose one of Zenon, you know, cartoon to illustrate the conference. And this cartoon is anti-Semitic because it shows that, you know, the Satan Israeli, you know, who is only interested in Holocaust and not on the other, I would say, victim of other genocide, ethnocide, whatsoever. This we succeed to. This time I succeed thanks to my newspaper, and this conference was cancelled. And it was organized by the Socialist Party of Molenbeek. You heard about Molenbeek? So it was before the attempt.
How do they know Molenbeek?
Molenbeek, this is where all the terrorists arise, you know, the terrorists in the different attacks in Belgium and France, in Paris especially. And this is newspaper. It's also in the main newspaper. This is, you know, the kind of pictures they will select to illustrate the wars between Israel and Gaza. And I've made a survey. When they want to illustrate other conflicts like Syria or whatever, they will never show, you know, how to say, dead body. They will refrain. They will be very cautious, but not for Israeli conflict. And of course, it reminds me other things. And the same with this. And this is very strong. Catholic newspaper. And this is La Pieta. Again, it's so obvious. And I've seen the redactor, the chief redactor, and the chief redactor was very astonishing. It means, oh, I didn't know it. But it was, we selected like this because it was beautiful. It's a beautiful picture, it's true. It's a beautiful picture. But it would remind us, you know, very harsh moment of the past. And voilà. I stop here and I thank you. Yeah.
I
I've got more things.
You
But
don't more? No, so go ahead. We have time. We
No,
have
no.
time. No, we have time.
yeah?
Yeah.
So the only innovation, I would say, it's the use of Holocaust against Israel. And you can see, this is the new innovation in contemporary, I would say, cartoon industry. And also the fact that, well, we didn't help the Jews, but finally, maybe we were right, because they are doing what the Nazis did, they are doing to the Palestinians what, you know, the Nazis did to them. So it's, as I said, it's the famous Schadenfreude. And this is again, you know, what you can see. And the case of Greece, it was very interesting, but it was Greece before. Now it's a little bit changing, but not really. Don't forget that Greece, they didn't witness Vatican II, you know, Orthodox Church. They haven't discussed anti-Semitism like the Catholic did. So they still have very strange look. This is Arafat, 2002. Arafat being a, and a look behind is, you can see, the gas chamber of Auschwitz-Birkenau. The worst, I would say, example of anti-Semitic, radical anti-Zionism is, I would say, in Greece cartoon industry. This is terrible. Don't be afraid, my friend. It means after what we just do the same that what has been doing in Auschwitz and Dachau. So it's absolutely terrible. And this is every time. This is Stavros and Statis. Every time there will be a discussion between an Israeli and an American soldier, there will be a Nazi, but of course a skeleton Nazi, commenting what they say. And this is at last completed thing. As we killed the Jews then, now the Israelis are killing the memory of the killed. Warsaw Ghetto in 1944, of course in 1943, but you won't expect from anti-Semite to know history, of course. And again, you know, Holocaust, you know, this is the ghetto, the young child, you remember, and the picture is there. And it's the same today in Gaza, in Palestine, etc. This is an Austrian cartoon, you know, and this is taken from, in Norway, from the Schindler List, if you remember, etc. And this is another famous competition, because there are many competitions. This is an Iranian competition, but not on Holocaust, on Zionism. And this is several examples. It's very funny. It's an Indonesian cartoon there. And, well, Hitler, you know, but we don't see very well, unfortunately. C'est un peu trouble. Maybe we can, I think it's not center-right. I think try to see the focus. Well, oui. It's a little bit better. Not really. So, look, 1942, and how he write now, with a K. And so, the Jews were already satanic, but it was a small Satan. And now, of course, today, it's a big Satan trying, you know, to kill the Arabs, etc. Then you see, oh my God, and it's the devil reading, or the death reading a history of Israel, of Zionism, etc. It's the same competition. This was made by a Belgian, actually, and I succeed to, how to say, I discussed with him, and now he's changed his mind. He won't do such a thing. And this is Auschwitz-Birkenau dressed as a Hasid. This is a Brazilian, and it's called Holocaust, and you see Palestinian. This one is very good, actually. It's an American cartoonist. Instead of Hollywood, it's Holocaust. And this is another Brazilian. You can see, of course. This also you've seen. No. Ah, no, I make a mistake. Ah, oui. No, let's stop here. Yeah. Ça marche pas. Voilà.
Okay. Ellie. No, Ellie, then. No, good. You're quiet.
Thank you for a great presentation. I would like to challenge you regarding your declaration that criticism of Netanyahu is not anti-Semitism.
Of course.
Basically, it is. I mean, of course, if you say something bad about Netanyahu, it's not anti-Semitism. But if you do it only towards Netanyahu, this is anti-Semitism. If you have a sense of justice and you use it only to criticize only only one person, only one country. If you believe in human rights and you only do it for the one country, it isn't anti-Semitism, because the root or the essence of anti-Semitism is having different rules for the Jews and different rules for the other. So if you criticize only the head of the state of the Jewish country, then I think, and you do it only towards this head of the state, it's purely anti-Semitism.
No, I don't think it's pure anti-Semitism. And how do you know it's only? Of course, it may be if it's only, but it's not the case. When you see, for instance, Amos Oz criticizing Netanyahu, you can't say that Amos Oz is anti-Semitic. It means it's just, no, but this is. And it depends how. If you just criticize his policy, it's like criticizing George Bush or Donald Trump or my prime minister. You can do it. And even if it's harsh, even if it's unfair, because it's very often unfair. But when you see how Macron is criticized now, it's terrible, because in France they like to criticize. I mean, you cannot say it's anti-French. But if you say that Netanyahu is a child killer, it's anti-Semitic. If you say that Netanyahu is a Nazi, it's anti-Semitic, of course. It depends what you say. That's it. That's the difference. This is how far goes the critics. But you can criticize. If not, you will forbid people. You know, democracy is based on criticism, by definition. Esprit critique, it's how, you know, we finally succeed to create a society which accepts all the differences.
I really want to say something, because I hear it from my students a lot, and we heard it earlier today. Netanyahu doesn't represent me as a Jew, or neither does IDF. But it's irrelevant what you think. It's more relevant what the world thinks, because as you showed in your cartoons, it's the tropes that are being applied to Netanyahu, which are historically been applied to Jews. So it doesn't matter.
It depends what?
No, but if you show Netanyahu
as a Nazi, of course it's anti-Semitic.
But my students will say, no, it's Netanyahu, it's not a Jew. Do you understand? But the mechanics is a Jewish trope. It's an anti-Semitic
I understand,
trope.
I understand. When you represent Sharon eating children, it's anti-Semitic by definition, right. Of course. Because Sharon is just a representation of what a Jew or an Israeli is. But of course, by definition. It is, of course. Of course it is. Of course. You understand the difference? You know, the difference between... No, I'm sorry. I explain to you after.
Yeah. Even though this was also very interesting, I wanted to go back to your first part of your presentation, because in the Flemish part you would have more nationalism.
Exactly.
In the Wallonian part it's more leftist, and in Brussels maybe more of an Arab anti-Semitism.
Exactly.
Do you have statistics on where numbers of cases? I'm on the way to finish a survey that I've been doing in Francophone school in Brussels, and it's comprehensive. You know, I've been interviewing through internet actually, but 2,000 children, 2,000 school teachers, school boys, and it's very interesting because I was asking questions about homosexuality, feminism, because I was obliged to, you know, Islamophobia, anti-Judaism, etc., and question of history. And we can say that the prejudice depends, and it's very interesting, on the religion. And so it means that the most prejudice will be within the Muslim people. And actually, 48 people of my, échantillon, of my sample were Muslim. 48%. So it's the two last years of secondary school. So now it's 25%, but in 2030 it's going to be more because they make more children. So, and they were 3 times more, they had 3 times more homophobic and anti-Semitic prejudices than I would say secular people. So the less secular, then Catholic, and then Muslim. And this is, and it's not manipulating because it's really, I interview, as I said, 2,000. We have, 117 schools, and I interview 30% of those schools, Catholic, secular, whatsoever, and this is the result. Maybe next year I will present it, but it needs a lot of work, but the results are already there. And for instance, 30% believe that Gaza is worse than Auschwitz. And it will be like 58% of Muslims will believe that Gaza is worse than Auschwitz. And Aleppo too, actually. And I was working also on genocide, it was my specialty. So I was asking questions about the Tutsi genocide. 80% never heard about the Tutsi genocide in Belgium, and it's a former colony of Belgium, 80%. 60% believe that there were no Armenian genocide, 60%. So it's very strange, the results. So it means no history anymore. That's the main problem. They do not nothing. And I was asking a question if Hitler was a nationalist leader, and 50% believe that Hitler was a nationalist leader, just a nationalist leader.
And maybe in the Flemish part, is it?
It was made actually 5 years before, and we have the same results, almost the same results. I did it for Brussels, and El Chardus did it 5 years ago for Flanders, and we have the same results. It was very much criticized because, you know, people doesn't like this kind of results, because when I was asking the main foundation, they say, and what will happen if the result will be wrong? It means wrong, it means it will show that prejudice exists within the Arabic, you know, population. And I say it's going to be like this, so they refuse to pay. So it took me 3 years to have the finance for such a survey. It's like this.
I just want to make a clarification about your point. In animal Muslim world, it doesn't work like that. Our president is not representative of us, no. For Muslim world, I've been at the university during the second intifada. I was in so I remember that people during Ariel Sharon for them not Prime Minister of Israeli state. No, he is representative on behalf of Jewish people around the world. So we should to make a cartoon or anything else to make him as a evil. He is responsible about killing every Palestinian child or etc. So in our case, it's complicated. Muslim and Arab people can't separate between who is political and who is religious, as you know, because we are religious states. So we just have a talk here with Arab colleagues and Professor Peter Patterson, and Said asked him about the difference between Hamas and Yasser Arafat. And Said said that at the end, Yasser Arafat wanted to set Palestinian state different, is not religious state. And I could make a clarification that all Arab states are religious states. Because, for instance, in Egypt, the second article of our constitution said the Islamic Sharia is the main and the only source of legislation. And the Tunis and the all of them. My master's degree was about this topic, by the way. So, we have semi-religious state and direct religious state applying the Sharia, fully Sharia, because Sharia is a very big issue. There is Hudud and there is other things. So, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, okay. Anyway, so,
what's your question?
So no, it's a clarification.
It's a comment.
So you can separate between
I did not understand.
political person
Do you understand?
and a religious person,
Ah.
Muslim and Arab.
Okay.
20%.
Okay, 20%.
Thanks.
So for me it's 15.
This afternoon we have actually two lectures. We have the chance to know the status quo of two Eastern European countries and the status quo for one Western European country. And I see the striking difference between the two lectures because you use a lot of data and your research is based on the analysis. So I feel a little bit. So I would like to know that. Can you also provide some data? Because you listed kindly the 7 reasons, and can you also tell us the dominant reasons for the anti-Semitism in Belgium, and if Belgium's case can be representative for the anti-Semitism in the current West European countries? And concerning the data part, because I didn't have the chance to ask you, the data that you provided us, how did you conduct all this survey? I mean, you mentioned about Facebook, but you know, it's important to know how you do that. Do you do that on Facebook or on the streets, and because the group will be totally different, and how large the sample is. So I'm sorry, I feel worried if there's no data, and even there's data, I still feel a little bit worried. So I want to know how I did that. Thank you.
Not everything was done by me.
So I can show data, but it was not, how to say, the purpose, because actually I'm, as he said, Charles said, I'm writing every year the report for the Institut in Tel Aviv. So I'm, you know, I'm conversing the data, etc. So what I can say, but it's not here. It's not. I can't. What is important to remember, it's the same in France, that there are 10% less Jews and Muslims, and I would say around 40% of the racist acts concern Jews in Belgium and in France. So this is important. And let's say in France, there were, I think, 13 Jews killed because they were Jews, and this is the reality in France. So, and this is the reality in Belgium, even if we had only 3 persons killed in the Jewish Museum. So the reality is that despite the Jews are a very tiny minority, it's targeted. But of course, as I said, you can live in Brussels as a Jew without any trouble. No trouble at all. But you have to behave in a certain way, and I would say maybe as a Maran, if you understand the word. As a hidden Jew, more or less. But you can go.
You listed can be spoken for the other Western European countries?
More or less, but I say the difference between France and the difference with Britain is the fact that they have an organized Jewish here. They have a lot of intellectuals. So in France too. So it means they are connected with the political parties. When you have Simone Veil, well, unfortunately she died, or Badinter or Bernard-Henri Lévy, the situation would be different because the Jews, they have an active role within the media, within the political party. In Belgium, we are only 15,000, which is nothing. And I would say it's the same in Italy, and it's the same in Norway. It's the same. The Holocaust, you know, destroyed Jewish diaspora. And only France and Britain, I think, they will be able to, more or less, to fight against those false representation. Because my students, because I'm giving a lecture on antisemitism to my students, after, I would say, 13 hours of lectures, I succeed to change the opinion only, I would say, of 40% of my students. The rest, they don't care, or they still have prejudices. But conspirationism is the most important thing. Many of my students believe, for instance, that, you know, how to say, the little, in America, the extraterrestre in Arizona.
UFOs.
Yes,
Martians.
No, the fact that there is in Arizona a special base where... Yes, they believe. 40% of my students believe it exists. You know that they have been surveyed in France. 9% of the French, 13% of the French boys believe that the Earth is flat. This is the reality. And my students believe that 9/11, not all of them, 30%, because I made always, when I started my lecture, I was asking them questions. 30% believe that 9/11 was an American plot. It's 30%, 30, yeah. It's very, and then the Jews organize, how to say, slavery. It's, you know, they don't know, and we are very few to be able to answer, and we are very few. So it's a long fight that we can't win.
Giuseppe, are you ready?
Charles, you want me to answer the question?
No. Let's focus on this. Sorry. After Giuseppe.
Okay, just 2 things. I'm sorry because.
That's okay. I'm looking at you.
First of all, the issue of transferring cultural minds from Christian Europe to the Arab-Muslim world and then back to Europe. I mean, we have other kind of mites against Jews, the idea of the Satanic Jew in the Arab-Muslim world, or also in the Iranian Muslim world, but actually the ritual murder, the vampire was not present in Arab and Islamic culture. Do you think that is something that has been made for the sake, let's say, I mean, for the Arab audience, or has it not been made for making the, let's say, Palestinian discourse more understandable by
it's a very good question.
European audience?
I don't know. It's a very good question.
Because it was probably intended to...
I think it's both. I think it's both. And actually, it's true. I don't think you can speak about Arab anti-Semitism before the 19th century. I would call it anti-Judaism, because the Arabs, if you're right with me, they despise the Jews. They never believe the Jews control the world. They despise them. This is typically Christian. And it started with, I would say, with the Christian penetration, cultural Christian penetration, 19th century, within the Ottoman Empire, and the good example is 1840 with the famous Damas Syrian, you know, accusation of the Jews trying, actually, how to say, ritual murder of a priest. And then it came, and I think it's both. The only way for the Arabs to explain why they can't beat Israel is to explain that the Israelis are satanic. If you know, how could you explain that they cannot beat this country? So this is one of the way, I suppose, that Israel is not a small country, it's the center of a vast conspiracy. But I agree with you, it's both.
Second question, but very, very quick. I still do not understand. Thank you for making all this clarification, but I still do not understand what is the difference between anti-Zionism and radical anti-Zionism.
Okay.
I mean,
in English, I will try.
There are many. One might say, for pragmatic reasons, maybe if Israel did not exist, it would be better for the Arab world. And this is not actually necessarily an anti-Semitic discourse. But why don't people, why people are not interested in what is going on in Morocco with Western Sahara?
I agree.
Someone could say if the kingdom of Naples was still there, it could be a good thing. But we don't find any other place in the world
I agree.
that is focused on by this kind of, nobody is interested in what Switzerland does. So there is, in any case, a different standard is applied. So the Jews do not have the right to have their own state. Or they think it is an Arab land. But when did it become an Arab land? It was not an Arab. Arabs were in the Arabian Peninsula. So in any case, even the Arab lands are colonial lands in a certain way.
I have no time, but according to me, there are the difference between anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism. This is very important. This is what I try to explain to my students. Anti-Semitism dates back from the Middle Age. There were no anti-Semitism before the 13th century, before the Crusaders, I would say. Before, people despised the Jews because they were Jews. They despised it, it was rational. The Christian despised the Jews as the Jews despise the Christian and the Muslim. It's rational. Monotheism are intolerant religion. This is what I believe. So it means that before the, I would say, the Crusaders, you won't find, in Spain only, with the Visigoth, you won't find any, you will find any traces of pogroms, for instance. The first pogroms is after the Crusaders. In France, Jews could, how to say, bear weapons, could go on horses. It was the same case like in Arabic countries. It was anti-Judaism. They despised the Jews for what they were. They didn't believe in Christ, or in the Muslim countries, they didn't believe in Muhammad as being the last prophet. But this is anti-Judaism. And for me, anti-Judaism is a neurosis. It's a neurosis because the Christian and the Muslim, they know what they owe to the Jews because their myth is based on the Torah. So this is the trouble. That's why they invented falsification for the Arabs. Theology, which means that the Torah, it's a fake. The real Torah say that all the prophets were already Muslim. And that's why the Christian invented theology of substitution. It means that the real Israel is it's the Christ. The real Israel is the church. But this is not anti-Semitic as such. What is anti-Semitism is to say that, to blame the Jews, that the Jews, it's not to blame the Jews for what they are, Jews, but to blame the Jews for what they are not. It means Christ killer. This is already the anti-Semitic, responsible of plague, responsible of disaster. You heard about Iran, that Iranis criticized Israel because they were supposed to play with clouds. There are no rains in Iran because of the clouds. This is typically anti-Semitism, to blame the Jews for what went wrong. And this is 13th century. It's only in 13th century that Jews were accused of desecrating the Holy Host, not before, of killing children, not before, responsible of plague, not before, of pest, not before. And this is le basculement, I would say. And this is a psychosis. You know the difference? Anti-Judaism is a neurosis. You can cure from a neurosis. According to me, you cannot cure from a psychosis. You cannot cure from radical anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. Because how would you convince someone that the Jews didn't kill children for the matzah? It's so absurd. It's impossible. How would you convince people that the Jews are not responsible of black slavery, and there were no Jews in Spain, in Portugal, in Britain, in France? It's so easy. It takes 2 minutes to explain, and still they believe Dieudonné, who said that the Jews invented, slavery. This is so difficult, and this is a neurosis. And it's the same. For me, anti-Zionism is a neurosis, and so you can try to explain. People, they don't know. It's ignorance. You can say 1948, the Jews accepted the creation in 1947 on an Arab state. It's the Arabs who invaded Israel, and maybe you can win. And I've won some battle. You can win against, anti-Zionism because it's based on, ignorance. But with a radical, you cannot win, because they believe that if sharks are killing tourists in Egypt, it's because the Mossad trained the sharks to kill German tourists. It's impossible.
Professor Mubakar told me, and I joke about that. He told me that one day hosted him in Arabic channel. I can't imagine that. I told him there is a conspiracy from Israeli side. They bring sharks into Sharm el-Sheikh to hunt the tourists and damage the Egyptian economy. He asked the host, what is the color of eyes those people who hunted by shark? He told maybe brown, maybe green. He said no, the Israeli shark only hunted the people with blue colors. It's not our one.
It's true.
I would like to go back to your overview regarding the 7 factors.
Yes.
Because you were mentioning, I think the second point was left habitus.
Yes.
And the fourth point was progressive left.
Exactly.
Yes. And I would like to ask you if a differentiation in that context is really...
one is pragmatic, l'autre is historical.
Excuse me?
One is pragmatic, to have the votes.
Right.
In Molenbeek, I'm living in Schaerbeek, and in Schaerbeek, I would say 40% of the population is Turks. And so all the political parties would choose, young Turks for candidates, but people who denies the Armenian genocide, because it's like this, to get the votes.
Right, but left anti-Semitism is so much more than that, isn't it?
No, but this is electoralism. And the rest is what I call an habitus. It's an habitus which dates back from Middle Age, and it's called a popular antisemitism. In the Middle Age, after the Crusaders, antisemitism came from below. It was the poor people who believed that they were oppressed by the Jews, who were killing in the Rhine. When they were going down the Rhine, they were killing, I think, 20,000 Jews. And, the princes, they tried to defend their Jews. But it was the priest, it was, people, who excited the population against the Jew. This is popular antisemitism. And it's, Nierenberg wrote a book on this, to write about the fact that it could be from down, not from the top. And the fact that the Jews are connected with money, with usury. And this dates back from the Middle Age and revival in 19th century, with Proudhon, Karl Marx, Bakunin, despite the fact that 90% of the Jews were poor. But they only saw Rothschild as a personification of the Jews. But Rothschild was,
And the second question would refer to the observation regarding the historical, the colonial past of Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like an accepted interpretation when it comes to colonialism analogies regarding Israel, that this is perceived as a way of expressing new antisemitism in Belgium? Because
no, this is my interpretation. Maybe I'm wrong. This is my interpretation. Okay. Don't forget, it's my interpretation. What?
Is there literature?
Of course not. No, of course not. No.
Okay.
No. No. Good question.
I also want to ask about Belgium. What is missing from your presentation is a bit of a context. I don't have the context, so if you can elaborate a bit. Belgium, we all know, is divided, generally speaking, to 3 parts. There's the Flemish part, there's the Walloon part, and there's Brussels.
And also a German part, actually.
Okay, so 4 parts. What I'm interested to know is whether there is any special characteristics about this newspaper that you showed us. Are they specialized Are they cartoons like Charlie Hebdo? Is it only Israel that they attack, or they attack also Muslims? What's the reaction? For my visitation in Belgium, and I am a frequent visitor to Belgium, the Catholics tend to be very good friends of Israel. Is there any public reaction? What's going on? What's the...
What do you mean the Catholics are very good friends of Israel?
This is my limited experience. So when such things happen, they don't like it. They write to me.
But you know, one of the pictures that I show you representing, you know, La Pietà, it was in the main Catholic newspaper.
Okay. So
for instance, and in my I'm working also in the parliament actually, because I have 2 jobs. I'm divorced, so you have 2 jobs. So
you want to say that a woman is one job, so
no, you need 2 jobs for the 2 women. You know, that's the difference. And so I'm working in the parliament, and the Catholic Party vote against Israel within, you know, they vote.
I'm talking about
they are followers. They're followers.
Yeah, yeah. So is there any particular, isn't there any characteristic that you could say about this newspaper, or they cross across all of the newspapers in Belgium?
Yes, but it's subtle. You know, it's not like they will. There is a difference between what I show. My cartoons about the Arabic world, I've got hundreds, thousands of them in my computer, so it's current. The cartoon I show about Belgium, it's very rare. It's like the relents, you know, how would you say? The okay, you know, it's not common, but it comes. You understand what I mean? It's not from time to time it will come like this, like an eruption, and it shows us where it comes. It's an expression, I would say, of the tradition, and you won't find the equivalent of any other conflicts.
What's the public reaction to that?
No, almost no public reaction, because I'm the director of a Jewish also, but it's not because of divorce. But I'm not paid for this. I'm the director of a Jewish magazine, and we launch campaign. And very often they consider us as crazy people, like people who, you know, are criticizing Belgium without knowing anything. Well, instead, I'm considered as an historical Zionist, and I'm a leftist. I'm considered as you know, I'm barred from certain newspaper, because I try to explain and to make, how would I say, a kind of pedagogy through history about what is anti-Semitism, what is not, what is anti-Zionism, what is not. And it's very complex. In France it will be much easier in France, because it's a question of education, and it's a question of having, that's why it's important to have a diaspora. Honestly, believe me. Diaspora, it's very, I'm not Bundist, but it means to defend Israel, you need a good diaspora.
Okay, so we're running, time is beginning to dwindle, and we have a bunch of questions.
Because a world without the Jewish community opens to all the misrepresentation, you know, to the conspirational thing. We need people.
I understand that anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism in Belgium have a meaningful, strong, unifying effect.
Yeah, exactly.
Are they the only ones, or are there any other unifying effects?
No, I think it's as I say, the lesser evil in a sense. They know it's the lesser evil, and it's the same case of what happened during the Second World War. You know, it's like anti-Semitism without anti-Semite in a sense also. This is important. Some of the people I know from the Socialist Party, they know that there have been an Armenian genocide, and that the Jews are not racist, that Zionism is, you know, they know it. But as I said, for pragmatic reason, it's unified, you know, it brings all together the extreme left people, the anti-capitalist people, and it's very easy. For instance, during the Second World War, in Liège, there was a socialist mayor during occupation, and he discussed with the German, you know, there was a kind of agreement with the German. He allowed the deportation of the communists, of the Jews, but not the Mason and not the socialists. The lesser evil. You want to preserve the Belgians? No, let's get rid of the Jews. You don't have to be anti-Semitic. Laval, who was the prime minister of Pétain, was not anti-Semitic, but he gave out the Jews. It's easy. This is what the German wants. Let's do it. And very often, I would say, or socialist and even Catholic party, because there is, it depends what you mean by Catholic. In the Catholicism today, you've got a left wing, of course. don't forget it. It's not traditional Catholicism. And I would say the majority is leftist even. They will also consider, you know, easier to give up the Jews, the Armenians, and the Tutsi. It's the same. It's very strange. The alliance we have now in Belgium, Armenian, Tutsi, and Jews. We are connected. We're fighting together, and it's very nice. And even now, I would say the Greeks, and especially the Greeks from and the Assyrians, the Christian from the Arabic, you know, lands. We have a kind of coalition because they suffer the same. They don't understand why nobody speaks about the fate of the Christian of Syria, Turkey, and so on, etc., of Iraq, because it's not valuable. They don't vote. They're not enough.
Yeah, Joel, I think my question was taken somewhat, albeit from perhaps a different angle. So I would just say that I do think your assessment of the 7 origins for contemporary anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism in Belgium strikes me as spot on. And it does seem that what is seen in Belgium might be representative of this across Europe. So with that said, my question is, how do you think we most effectively deconstruct attempts to parse anti-Zionism from anti-Semitism that you see in Europe?
Well, just to explain that Israel is not responsible of the evil of the world, that Israel is behaving like any other state, sometimes wrongly, sometimes this is the only way to do it. It means just to say that, to stop with the double standard, as we say, the double norm. It means if my parliament will condemn Israel and Syria and Russia, it would be more or less okay, and Morocco, but it wouldn't do it. So this is, and how, and this is what I try to explain to our, editorialists, why when you show pictures on Israel, you will show children, and never on other countries. When they saw this little island, Ilan, you remember, the little boy, Kurd boy, who drowned, this was so new, it was like a scandal. Why? They show a dead body, but they do it for 10 years about the Israeli conflict. And nobody, you know, what is intelligence? It's not a question of culture, it's a question of connecting things. And people are not connecting. You understand? They are very prude concerning the other conflict. They will be very cute. But when Israel, they will show pictures which, according to me, is connected to, you know, representation, old mythology, which are still working. This is to respond to your question too, and it's a long time that I'm speaking in English, my friends. It's okay, but
you're doing an excellent job.
Oh, thank you very much.
I wanted to.
You too.
I wanted to thank you for your presentation. I'm an early modernist who looks at particular ritual murder accusations.
Ah, yes.
So I want your pictures if I can get them, right?
My pictures. I'm married.
A couple of things, and then I want to end with a connection to what Ansel said. I think you're absolutely right, and to see the Crusades as a watershed moment.
Absolutely.
But it is important, I think, also to note that the ground was laid before that to some degree by church councils
exactly.
and canon law.
I agree.
And one of the things that they were quite express about that helps, I think, to understand the nature of anti-Semitism and how it was occasionally has been dismantled is that they tried to prevent contact. Right?
It's true,
so
it's true.
Jews and Christians could
it's
not
true.
eat together.
It's
Jews
true.
could not have Christian service.
Exactly.
So they try to prevent contact.
But this is anti-Judaism. Right. It's not anti-Semitism. Right. And I agree with you.
But I think
I agree.
I agree. You know, the combination of a lack of contact and a malevolent ideology together create a horrible combination. And where we have seen some departure, like in France after the French Revolution, it came as a result of the opposite. There was contact, and there was a different ideology, at least attempted such. The other thing about the conspiracy theories and people's propensity, this is a minor point about that, but you know, I think, isn't it true that people find magic a lot more appealing.
Absolutely.
Because it's easy,
of course.
right? Magic is easy. You can make it
La
up.
pensée, magic thought,
right.
of course.
And then as
of
you were
course.
speaking and as others were speaking, I thought to myself that I wanted my own litmus test for this distinction. What would I think was the distinction between criticism of Israel and radical anti-Zionism that is anti-Semitic? And I came up with several things.
Mm-hmm.
One, if it traffics in anti-Semitic stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly.
Two, if it collectivizes or generalizes. All Israelis do this, Israel is like that.
Okay.
Three, if it holds Israel to a different standard.
Exactly.
Fourth, if it's obsessive about Israel.
Exactly.
Obsessive
exactly.
In Israel, particularly as the antithesis of human rights.
Exactly.
Concern of human rights, and then the last one I put was conspiracy mongering.
Exactly. So
that was my list. How do you?
It's perfect. I honestly fully agree. But ERA definition, exactly. You distribute the IRA definition.
No,
you should distribute.
With students, I think that's very.
But if you see exactly what you say, maybe if I come next year, maybe I should explain my history of anti-Semitism, and I would agree with you because according to me, they side the fact Judah is anti-Semitic. You know, they invent or they push on a figures called Judah, the Jew who betrayed Jesus. But everyone was Jew. Everyone was Jew. Marie-Madeleine was Jew. Pierre was Jew. Everyone was Jew. But it's the Romans who killed. And I've got a very good image who shows the fact it was a marketing problem because the Christians, they had to convert the Romans because the Romans were pagans. They couldn't say to the Romans, hey guys, you kill our God. They couldn't do it. So they say, no guys, you didn't kill our gods. It's the Jews who did it, Judah. So they insist on him. So this is accusing of the Jews what they didn't do. They didn't kill Jesus. And I just came from Budapest when I've seen the Holocaust Museum in Budapest. And it's not made by Jews. And it started with a little film about anti-Semitism. And it's very strange because it's based on Jesus and they say not all Jews killed Jesus, only few of them. My God, I was shocked. I'm partly Hungarian too, so it was terrible. I think it's, how could you say such a thing?
Okay, I don't know how much English more do you want to speak, but I'm interested in the point of the colonial issue. I think it's happening in England as well and in France as well. And I'm just curious to know, since it's the 60s, so it's not that, I mean, the people alive who were,
exactly,
it's
right?
not like the 19th century or even India, which is, you know, older. So there's no, I'm just curious to know, there's no discussion, or they teach it in schools, or there's like documentaries,
It's starting now. For instance, they're just renovating a very nice Tervure museum on Congo. They're just renovating it. It was 2 weeks ago. We have a Patrice Lumumba Square. It's only 3 weeks ago. So it's starting, but it was very slow process. Very slow process. And usually when we speak about the Holocaust, we speak about Vichy. We didn't speak about Belgian collaboration. You know, they only acknowledge the collaboration of the Belgian authority. They do. In France, they do a lot of work. Please, please, please. France is a leader in memory of Holocaust. Jacques Chirac is true, it's late. It's 1995. Belgium is 2013. Finally, they accept the fact that Belgium did collaborate with the Nazis. And when we speak about colonization, in Belgium we speak about Algeria conflict. Not about Congo. It's very strange. It's a kind of Namibia. It's changing because we have a lot of immigration from Africa and actually supported by the Catholics. And it's coming. It's coming up. And it's going to cure Belgian society. But it's very complex attitude. It's easier to speak about Israel colonialism than Belgian colonialism. But in France, they do a lot of work. Honestly, I'm more and more pro-French. In history, it means. Memory. No, it's finished. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joel.